How do we get people to cooperate with us and coordinate with us? One solution that we're looking at right now is that social order can be created or maintained as groups pressure individuals to behave in ways that serve the interests of the group as a whole. We're going to be using a number of vocabulary words that I want you to be familiar with. Conformity, the idea of obeying the rules of the group. Conformity is the desired outcome for a group. Deviance, breaking the rules of the group. Group pressure, an informal rule of society that is enforced at the level of the group. Women not shaving their legs. There's a group pressure for women to shave their legs. There's a group pressure to use drugs in certain situations. And we're going to be talking a lot about rewards and punishments. Group pressure specifies what people ought to do or ought not to do. Group pressure is external, which is the opposite of values. Values, you're internally evaluating yourself. Group pressure is an external criteria for evaluation. Group pressure is enforced externally, and group pressure requires rewards and punishments to work. The idea here is that we're judging others, we enforce our judgment on others, and we enforce it through rewards and punishments. So on your discussion board, I asked you to offer 10 examples of group pressure. I hope you can do that. I have no doubt that you can, so I'm not worried. So one of the questions I asked is, how and why do people form groups? People form groups only when there is a net benefit. They don't join a group when, in general, people don't join a group if they're just going to give and give and give and get nothing back whatsoever. In fact, if you really think about it, that situation's impossible. Even somebody who is giving and giving and giving, they're always getting back something. The principal benefits of groups is the concentration or pooling of resources. We join groups, we form groups, because we know that we can gain security. There's insurance from national disasters and disease. There's greater access to mates and information. There's trust. If you're a member of a group, you know that you have their trust. And you can also ask people for their time. If you need help, if you need other people's time and energy, you go to your group and you ask for time or energy. So humans have formed groups for a variety of reasons, ranging from security from natural disasters all the way to sort of emotional needs and time. How do we reward people for conforming to group pressure? How do we enforce group pressure when someone violates group norms? Another way of asking these questions is, how do we sanction others? I like to sort of draw attention to the sort of large diversity of ways. Well, how do we punish people? Well, we could beat the crap out of them, punch them in the face, maim them, break their arms and legs. That's a punishment for not following the group's norms. On the other hand, we can go all the way to an unhappy face. If someone does something we don't like, somebody breaks one of our group pressures, we can look at them and just give them a frown or a disapproving glance. So there's a lot of diversity in there, from breaking people's arms to frowning at them. How do we reward people for conforming to our group pressure? We could give them money. That's really nice. Just hand them some money and say, every time you do something, I'm going to, make sure I give you some money or food. But again, it goes all the way to nonverbal communication. We just smile at somebody approvingly, and that's a way of rewarding conformity. When and why do group pressures fail to create the desired outcome? When and why do people fail to conform to group pressure? This is a harder question. Sometimes people don't know the rules of the group. For example, I did not always live in California, and where I used to live in Maryland, my friends and I, we'd all hug. Guys, girls, we'd just give each other hugs hello and hugs goodbye, and that's how we did things. When I moved to California, I started making new friends, and I was always confused. Do I shake hands? Do I hug? What do I do? And you don't know the rules. If you don't know the rules of the group, it's hard to conform. Groups don't have definite boundaries. I will not conform to group pressure if I'm not a committed member of the group. If you are, in the core of the group, yes, the group pressures matter to you and they're important. You helped create them. But if you're on the periphery of the group, well, you might not be as committed to the group pressures. Well, what about groups offering resources? I do not need to conform to group X if group Y will give me the same resource without the particular group pressure I dislike. For example, what if you want your group to tell everyone that you're cool and you're awesome and that everyone should like you? Well, if group Y will offer that to you, but group Y doesn't require you to use drugs, well, then you might join group Y. So it's sort of thinking about what resources do the groups offer, and can I get the resource I want without the pressure that I don't want? So if that situation comes up, people might not conform to group X. What else? Well, people will deviate from the group if they are not punished by the group. If I can easily break the rule, if I know a rule exists, but I break it and it's never enforced, or it's only selectively enforced, maybe when somebody low on the totem pole in the group breaks the rule, people will enforce the rule. But if I'm a core member of the group and I break the rule and people never punish me, well, then I can break the rule. People will reject group pressure if they are not being monitored. So if no one sees me, I can break the rule. Whenever everyone comes around, I'll pretend I never did it. People might reject group pressure if the penalty is insignificant. If I'm just going to get a dirty look, that might not motivate me to conform. If you're going to break my arm, I'm probably going to conform. So these are some sort of situational, contextual factors that matter for whether or not we conform to our groups. When are we likely to enforce group pressures? When are we likely not to enforce group pressures? I find that a lot of students don't understand this question, so I want to explain it. If I'm a member of a group and we believe women should shave their legs, it's possible I might not enforce that group pressure. What if I'm alone with my wife and she hasn't shaved for 3 or 4 days and I touch her legs and I say, you know what? I want to get some. I really want to have some sex. Well, then I forego that group pressure and I say it doesn't matter. I don't, even make a face at all. I say, honey, I love you and let's get it on. And I forego that group pressure. The idea here is that we do not always enforce group pressures. We'll just say, you know what, it doesn't matter. So what are those situations? When are we likely not to enforce group pressures? And when are we likely to enforce them? Well, what if there's a high cost of enforcement for me? If I need to exert a lot of energy or time to enforce the rule, I might not enforce it. If enforcing the rule is unpopular, I will probably not enforce it. So, think about this. If I have to walk up to a group of bikers, big guys wearing leather, driving Harleys, there's like 10 of them, and they're smoking cigarettes in a place they're not supposed to smoke cigarettes, and I'm somewhere with my kids. Now, I'm probably not going to say anything, because the cost of enforcement might be very high. I would be maybe a little scared to approach that group and enforce that group pressure. And it's also unpopular. How much does the infraction bother me? Am I only slightly bothered? Then I'll probably not enforce the rule. If I'm extremely annoyed, then maybe I will enforce the rule. So again, this sounds like simple stuff, but once you have all of these hypotheses in your head, and you understand all these different facets of when are we likely to enforce, when are we not likely to enforce, when are people likely to follow group pressure, when are people not likely to follow group pressure, what's authority doing, what's the culture, what's the meaning system, are we monitored, are we not monitored, are people motivated by habit, self-interest? Once you get all these balls up in the air, it starts to actually be a little bit cumbersome. So I want you to be happy with the simplicity of things, but also realize that when you add it all together, it might be a little overwhelming. Well, I also want to talk to you about free riding again. The first order free rider problem. Within our group, we all benefit from group pressure to share love or time. If I'm a member of the group and I need some love, I benefit from getting love from my group. But I can free ride. I can take love, but not give it back to the group. I can take cigarettes if I'm a smoker and never give cigarettes back to the group. I'd be a free rider, right? You're a cigarette moocher. Now, groups attempt to solve the first order free rider problem by making people internalize values and enforcing group pressure. So this is the first order free rider problem. There is a public good or a collective good or a club good, and someone or some people are taking from the group, but they're not giving back. This is the free rider problem we already talked about. Well, let's talk about the second order free rider problem. Within our group, we all benefit from group pressure to enforce the rules of the group. But people can free ride. They can accept the benefits of the group without enforcing the rules of the group. A great example of this is teaching. If all teachers have a policy where we do not accept late work, we all benefit from that policy. You're not going to have students coming up to you and saying, hey, can I hand in my work late? That's not going to happen because all teachers have created this system where we all don't accept late work, and we're teaching our students that time matters and hand your stuff in on time. It's good for the students. It's good for the teachers. But here's the deal. All teachers benefit from group pressure to enforce the rules of the group. But teachers can free ride. They can accept the benefits of the group without enforcing the rules of the group. So maybe we have teachers out there that accept late work. And, they do that from time to time. And they are free riding on the system that has taught other students to hand work in on time. And they are working against the system. This is the second order free rider problem, where you don't enforce the group pressure. If you're not enforcing the group pressure, you're free riding on the system. If you're a member of the group, you have to enforce the group's rules. Please reflect on this statement. All group pressure is useful. Do you agree with this statement? Can you think of group pressures that persist despite the fact that they are dysfunctional? So go to the discussion board and talk to your classmates about that. Last, I want you to go to the discussion board and discuss this statement. It is impossible for a person not to be a conformist. Emphasis on the word not. Do you agree with this statement? Can you think of a person that fails to conform? Who is that person? Tell us about this person that fails to conform. Go to the discussion board and discuss the statement, it is impossible for a person not to be a conformist.